Hello, everyone, and welcome. Welcome to our show. If you love professional wrestling, you're in the right place because today on the Chillin' with the Villain podcast, we're talking all things pro wrestling, but more specifically, we're talking about WrestleMania. What are you laughing at?
You just got it wrong the second time as well.
Specifically, we're talking about WrestleMania. It's WrestleMania season, and there's a lot to talk about. And this will be WrestleMania 40, which is pretty crazy when you think about it. 40 years of WrestleMania. I feel like when they did WrestleMania 1, then it was like, oh, WrestleMania 2. I guess the first WrestleMania was just WrestleMania. Like, oh, they're doing it again. Hey, WrestleMania 2. Then, oh, they're doing a third WrestleMania. Oh, a fourth. I bet when they got to WrestleMania 8, people were like, oh, this is getting a bit ridiculous now.
Yeah.
And now they're up to WrestleMania 40. It's going to get to sea levels eventually, I think.
Yeah, it's funny how it took them quite a long time to realize that. It's like, so it was X7 or X8 where they're like, let's try and make it sound different. Oh, no, 2000. They tried to make it sound a little different.
Well, also now, or they did for a few years, I think with Vince, I think they stopped giving the WrestleMania's actual numbers. Do you know that?
No, I did not know that.
Yeah, I think so. I think even this one, I don't think it's called WrestleMania 40. I think they're calling it WrestleMania XL. Let me have a look.
Oh, so they're giving the Roman numerals. They've always done the Roman numerals.
Is XL the Roman numeral for 40?
For 40, yeah.
Is it?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I didn't know that. Let me have a look. WrestleMania XL. Okay, but I'm pretty sure previous WrestleManias have just called them WrestleMania, and Vince didn't want to put a number on it because he didn't want to age it or whatever it was. To me, that seems kind of ridiculous. Yeah. And when they called it WrestleMania 2000, I'm not sure how I felt about that. But that was kind of that year in 1999 leading into 2000.
You were allowed to call everything 2000.
Everything was something 2000. So before I go any further, I am the villain, Marty Skell, if you haven't realized already. Joining me as always is my friend and producer of the show, Sam. Before we get into WrestleMania talk, and I should say we are going to talk about the best and the worst of WrestleMania over the past 40 years. Before we go into that, I think it is worth mentioning, like, typically we don't talk about a lot of contemporary wrestling on this show, but it seems like WWE just seems to be smashing it on all cylinders recently. And it seems it would be a shame for us to not speak about it. The previous Monday Night Raw, so we're actually recording this on a Wednesday, but this Monday's Monday Night Raw, a lot of people on the internet saying it's one of the best Raws of all time. And finished with a big segment with The Rock getting color on Cody. We know Cody loves the blade, and he's brought it back to the WWE. And really cool segment where The Rock is beating up Cody in the rain and talking trash to him. And yeah, I tuned in. Well, actually, I didn't really tune in. I watched some of the videos on YouTube. That's what I do now because I didn't realize this till the other day either. I think WWE is the number 10 biggest YouTube channel in the world. So they're probably making so much money just from YouTube alone, right? Like millions,
amazing,
surely.
Right? Yeah.
So
Triple H unboxed his, was it like Ruby YouTube?
Oh, yeah.
Recently, yeah. So for
Pretty
like 10
impressive.
million, is it like 10 million subscribers or something?
I think it's 100 million, isn't it?
100 million. Jeez. Yeah. No, that makes more sense.
Yeah.
Wow. That's nuts.
I mean, and with things like this, having Hollywood actors having wrestling matches, I can see it's just going to keep growing and growing. But not only do they do this hot angle, they've also got The Rock on there now, dropping F-bombs even. He cast, I think on TV they bleeped it, but I saw like a recording or a fan cam footage, and on the arena, The Rock's dropping the F-bomb, and seems like WWE is definitely getting edgier and edgier. And we spoke about before, a lot of people talking about, the return to the Attitude Era. And I don't necessarily think that's the case or that's what people want. I think people just want a product that's kind of aimed more at adults, just kind of like UFC is, I guess. Do you know what I mean? And not so much what was that line that Roman Reigns said that time? That suffering
succotash, son.
would make it a sniveling. This is going to be hard for me to say clearly. A sniveling little suck up sellout full of suffering succotash. People don't want that. So they're moving in a new direction. Vince is out, and this is what they're going for. And another thing I saw from the show was Cody's opening promo. And just the big thing that stood out to me, there was a whole bunch of signs in the crowd. And I was like, whoa, you can tell wrestling's getting hot again when there's signs in the crowd. Not only that, but they'd sold something like 16,000 tickets or nearly that amount for a Monday Night Raw, which I'm sure they haven't done in years and years and years. So it's getting really, really hot right now. It's going to be interesting to see if WWE can continue this momentum post WrestleMania.
It's a tall order. It's a lot to ask.
It is.
The build-up is so important. We've talked about Royal Rumble, Elimination Chamber. It really does kind of steamroll or snowball. Like it really does build to a crescendo. Then you have, it used to be Backlash. What's the pay-per-view after WrestleMania? Because I actually wouldn't mind if there's time to breathe after WrestleMania, honestly.
Is it not Backlash anymore?
Oh, is it? Maybe. Yeah.
Maybe it's not. Maybe it is. Or is it TLC? I don't know.
Yeah, but my point is, like, I actually wouldn't mind if there's some kind of like downtime after, because this has been a lot to like maintain, right?
It has. But here's the thing. Typically, they do WrestleMania. Then the Raw after WrestleMania, they tend to do debuts and do a bunch of big angles and everything else. They've still got their trump card in the form of like Punk. He's still injured. I'm sure he's going to come back at some point. He's now going to be the special referee for Drew and Seth Rollins. You got to believe they're going to go into Rollins and Drew. It's really funny. So The Rock and Roman Reigns feud seems to have turned into purely concentrating on Rock versus Cody. And the Drew versus Seth Rollins match seems to have just turned into Drew versus Punk. I was like, why are they doing a build for Drew versus Punk when the match is Drew and Seth? And this whole Cody and Rock thing, it seems like The Rock, I don't know, to me, it seems like maybe he was a little bit upset that the fans rejected the match of him and Roman. So now he's here to show everyone how great he is. And it seems like Cody is leaning into that as well, as opposed to leaning into the Roman Reigns feud, which is what it really should be all about. Or the story has been about this whole entire time. But Cody's a smart man, and he realizes that The Rock is the biggest star in the world, and him to rub shoulders with him is
only a good thing.
Exactly. So it's kind of bizarre right now, and it seems very unpredictable, but I think that's what's making it so special, I think, all this sort of unpredictability and everything else. Would you agree?
Oh, I totally would agree. Are you impressed with how kind of malleable WWE is in that they're able to just kind of like change things based on the reception, like put their little things out there, and if people bite, they run with it. If they don't, they can just pivot. I'm kind of impressed with it.
Absolutely. And I think that's what wrestling should be. I mean,
I do.
We get on our social media all the time, like, so it's obviously from non-wrestling fans, but people that will say, oh, wrestling's fake, wrestling's fake. And it's like, okay. And then you get other people say, well, no, it's scripted. It's like, okay, it's kind of true too. But the whole point of pro wrestling to me and the idea of working is the fact that you would improvise and everything else. Do you know what I mean? And I think WWE, for years, they haven't really done that with sort of Vince in control. They've kind of had ideas and stuck with it. Now it seems like they're truly working. And it seems like they do that a lot more and better than AEW. AEW seems to kind of have a plan, kind of stick to it. On the flip side, I will say this. Did we speak about it on the show a few weeks ago where Sami Zayn, he beat Chad Gable to win the number one contendership for the IC title at WrestleMania? And then all the fans were like, we want Gable, we want Gable. And obviously, because we want Cody worked, now it's going to be a case of, are the audience just always going to reject stuff and be like, no, we want this, and then they're going to have to do it for them? That they run a risk of doing that as well, I think.
Just having to end up catering to the demands of fans who find out, oh, hey, if we make a big enough noise, WWE do what we want. Yeah.
Yeah. And they might
It's
not
possible.
always, decide to cater to them, but it seems like they're always going to try and do that, if that makes sense, because they've rewarded them a few times by doing that. It seems like now they're always going to be like, well, this wasn't our idea. This is what we want, So,
who's training who? Are the fans training WWE or are WWE training the fans?
I don't know. It's a good question.
Something to watch out for, isn't it? Let's keep an eye on this. It's interesting.
But I'm a big believer in giving the fans what they want, but at the same time, I'm not a big fan of always giving them what they want. Do you know what I mean? I don't think it should be a case of every single time a decision goes the way that the fans don't like, and now it's like, let's boycott the company, and oh no, we've got to fix this. Do you know what I mean? I think that there was a part of Vince's booking. Everyone was upset when The Undertaker lost the streak.
Yeah.
I was kind of for it because I was kind of like, this is just so unpredictable and was such a big shocking moment. And I like that. I like wrestling when it's not just completely predictable. Do you know what I mean? And I feel like most wouldn't have made that decision. I like being, just completely did not see that coming. That's what I like to feel. So, and I feel like in this day and age, that's very hard to do. Triple H with his style of booking seems we spoke about it before, how he likes his badasses. He likes his winning streaks. It's still kind of new and fresh and interesting. It'll be interesting to see how that kind of works out long term. I think there's still a lot of fans that dislike the fact that Roman Reigns is champion, and he's been champion for over 3 years now. That I personally love because it's not been done for so long. I'm kind of under, like, in my head, I feel like you should just have Roman Reigns as a champion as long as you have Roman Reigns. So if he has a 5 or 6 year title reign, why not?
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm pretty sure he's going to lose to Cody. We just spoke about trying to ride that momentum. I think if The Rock can kind of stay around, I'm pretty sure he's got movies and stuff coming up. But I feel like if Cody can win, and I think we spoke about this on the show, I think it'd be cool if Cody wins and then we see Cody and The Rock singles match at SummerSlam. But it seems like they're doing all the build for Rock and Cody right now. Do you think that should Cody win the world title, which he most likely will, do you think he stays as over once he's world champion as he is now? Or do you think that the overness is in the chase of Cody, and the overness is the fact that the diehard wrestling fans hate the fact that Roman Reigns has been champion for so long and hasn't defended his championship every week and is a part-timer, etc., etc.?
So this reminds me of, remember the whole Leonardo DiCaprio has never won an Oscar, and then he finally wins an Oscar and everyone's like, oh, okay. That's what I feel like this is going to be like with Cody. I feel like the chase is where people are at, for sure. I am. If he wins, I'll be like, okay, cool. And then we'll just want the next thing. I actually would like it if he doesn't win and we keep this going. Well, I don't think it's going to happen, but I would like that.
I actually liked it when I predicted last year that he wasn't going to win, even though everyone thought he would. And I like that decision just because I thought, you didn't give all the people what they wanted right away, and it wasn't predictable. And if he did win, I wonder what position he'd be in right now. I don't know. But I do think once Cody wins the title, we're assuming he does, what's next for him? And who's the next big heel for him to be programmed with? Because I think there's a very good chance that the audience could turn on Cody, because Cody is very kind of flash of his money, etc., etc. On his promo, I did roll my eyes a little bit on his promo the other day where he mentioned the fact that he paid for this fan's bachelor party. I thought, you didn't need to get that in there, did you? Like, it's very cool that he paid for. He's basically doing what The Rock does, the humble brag. But I feel as if once Cody wins the world title, again, we say about the fans never really been happy. It seems like once he's the champion, then they're going to say, okay, we want to see LA Knight as the champion now, or we want to see CM Punk, or we want to see Randy Orton have another title reign, or we want to see Gunther as the world
I
champion.
was just going to say Gunther.
Right?
Yeah, I think that would be a good logical next step if Cody does win, is to bring Gunther up there and have those two face off. What do you reckon?
Well, I thought the direction they were going to go was having Gunther defeat Seth Rollins for the world title.
Oh, okay.
But now it seems like it's going on Drew. So maybe having Gunther wrestle for the other title would be maybe a better direction. I don't know.
Yeah.
And that could be someone good for Cody to wrestle for sure. But I'm not too sure like what other big heels Cody can even be programmed with. Like who's his first title defense after Mania? I'm trying to think off the top of my head.
I don't know.
It's kind of difficult, right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
AJ Styles or something, you know?
Maybe. He's looking ripped now, man.
Well, yeah, big and ripped. Yeah. It's these guys, they have their injuries and then they come, they're in their mid-40s and come back bigger and better than ever. It's pretty cool. It's Mania season. Yeah, Mania season. Yeah. I wanted to take a minute to talk about our newest sponsor, MadCatBeardCare.com. Myself, I have a beard. Sam, you have a beard. Beards are very popular now, but you've got to take care of your beard. You got to get yourself over to MadCatBeardCare.com. I'm looking at the oils and the balms on there. First of all, they're all designed by different pro wrestlers and marketed as different pro wrestlers. So there's a bunch of guys involved with this, like Matt Cardona, Brian Myers, Delirious, Jay Lethal, a whole collection of awesome wrestlers that have their own product on madcatbeardcare.com. Not only that, but a portion of the profits go to cat rescues around the country. So I think that's already exciting. But the beard oils and the balms both are made from organic argan oil, jojoba, and vitamin E, which when combined helps to soften, strengthen, and vitalize and stimulate circulation in the face, nourishing and strengthening the hair follicles to assist growth. Now, this is what you need. If you've got a patchy beard, you need to get yourself to madcatbeardcare.com. The balms also include the same oil and mixture as the oils, but he adds the shea butter, which helps alleviate itch and irritation to your face, while also helping control pesky stray hairs by allowing you to style them into place. He uses local organic beeswax that helps to get more of a hold to your style. So you got to look after your skin underneath your beard just like you do your scalp. Like these aren't things that you can neglect. And that's why we've teamed up with madcatbeardcare.com. And right now, just for listening to the show, you can get yourself a whopping 15% off products at madcatbeardcare.com by using the code VILLAIN. That's 15% for the promo code VILLAIN. That's VILLAIN. Pick yourself up the Villain's Curse, my own beard oil, my own beard balm. That's exactly what I use every day on my face to make my famous beard look beautiful. You can do the same thing too. So last time I'm going to say it, get yourself over now to madcatbeardcare.com. Promo VILLAIN. We are here today to talk about the best and worst of WrestleMania. And I guess I might as well get straight into it. And I'm actually doing best. We talk about best matches, best moments. I'm going to talk about the best matches, but they're kind of one and the same.
Right.
My favorite WrestleMania match is, I spoke about this before, WrestleMania 13, Bret Hart, Stone Cold Steve Austin, the submission match. And
yeah,
I feel like this gets brought up a lot. And people ask me, so like, why is this your favorite match from WrestleMania? And I guess the question I kind of ask is, what kind of defines a great wrestling match? And I understand how people love these matches between Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker in more recent years, and they were fantastic. But to me, a great wrestling match isn't defined by how many big false finishes there are and how many, I thought that was the finish, but it isn't. Like, that can be very good, very exciting, and it's definitely a big part of a lot of great wrestling matches. But to me, I think a great wrestling match is just kind of the story that it tells and the way it makes you feel and everything else. And I just think, like, that match with Steve Austin and Bret, I don't think there's really any false finishes, really, because, well, first of all, it's a submission match, but there's no
Right,
1,
yeah.
2, oh, 1, 2, oh. But I think the reason I love it is just for mainly for the simplicity of the whole thing. I mean, Austin just sells so perfectly in that match. And Brett, who's very subtle, you just see his sort of growing frustration and wrestling more and more kind of like a dick. And
Yes.
and just the story that it told throughout. And obviously, it felt like they had that such amazing ending with Austin in the sharpshooter, blood dripping down his face, not giving up. It feels like that was just the perfect ending to a match ever. That anything that they did before that, they could have done anything, it seems. Do you know what I mean? That it doesn't really matter because even though what they did was great, just that ending just so beautiful and perfect and told the story that they wanted to tell. And I think just the amount of emotions and feelings that whole story they told and like what it went into, turning Brett heel, turning Austin into the biggest baby face and kind of set that standard of him never giving up. It's very hard to put your finger on it because there's no real right answer. But if I had to put my finger on the birth of the Attitude Era, I think it might be here. And there's people argue a bunch of different, people argue the King of the Ring 996 when Austin did the 316 promo. People would argue this, I guess. People would argue the Montreal screw job. People would even argue as late as WrestleMania 14 when Austin first wins the world title from Shawn. I think, me personally, I'm going to say here, and I'm going to define the era before. So the era before this was the New Generation.
Yeah.
I'm going to say that kind of 96 was very much New Generation, but edgier, right? And because this is WrestleMania 13, so we've still got like the start of the National Domination. Obviously, Brett's still there, but but Austin here, he's been a heel this whole entire time, but this is when he changes. And that to me kind of sums up the Attitude Era, the fact that the crowd all love the big heel and all the things that wrestling fans have been conditioned to dislike and hate and boo, they've flipped it around and decided that they love it now, right? And that kind of happens in this match. So I get the argument for the Austin 316 promo, but Austin was still a heel. I don't know if loads changed after that. I mean, Austin obviously got more of a push and everything else, but maybe the language they pushed a little bit more. Maybe they were saying "damn" a little bit more. So, like I said, New Generation, but edgier. But I feel like here at this match, like everything changed.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure if I agree with you or not. It's one of those type of things where I'm going to need to think about that quite a bit. But I will certainly agree with towards the end. There's just like the image of you've got Brett still in his like classic outfit.
Mm.
You've got like a classic style ring, like the blue ring, but Brett being kind of half caught up in the ropes with the power cables around his neck and blood in the ring. It's like a very kind of jarring image. It's like it looks classic. We've got classic Brett, we've got the classic ring, but there's just like something about it, being choked
different energy
with the different energy, and it's just like kind of almost jarring. It's not jarring in a bad way. It's jarring in there's something that doesn't kind of add up. It's like like you said, it's like half attitude, half classic. So
yeah,
from that alone, I would agree with you. Actually, I think I remember something like when Stone Cold takes the cable out, and then one of the commentators says, "Oh, I think it might still have power," and then the other one says, "As long as it's in the hands of Stone Cold, it has power," as he's wrapping it around his neck. And then obviously like he hits Stone Cold with the ring bell. So one's like, they both got weapons. One of them's bleeding. It's a very, I think, that leads, that I'm kind of with you on that one. It's at least like visually, there's definitely a change.
Yeah. And what I love about this match as well is the fact that they have, it's a submission match, but there's essentially no rules or whatnot.
Right.
But they're using, in terms of the weapons and stuff they're using for the violence in this match, they're using stuff that would be there around ringside.
Around the ring.
Do you know what I
use a
mean?
chair.
Like a
They use
cable, right? A chair,
the cables, the ring bell.
right? Oh, yeah, ring bell. It's not like, oh, we're having a no DQ match, so now all of a sudden there's a bag of thumbtacks underneath the ring, and there's a
kendo sticks. Yeah.
right, yeah, like
A stop sign.
right, like a ladder under the ring. Okay, can maybe give you, that. Okay, fair enough. Still pushing it, but yeah, kendo stick. Why would they be kendo sticks or a bag of thumbtacks?
Right. No, I'm totally on board with that. I liked how scrappy it felt with the cables, the ring bell. The thing that you mentioned about Brett, like as he goes on, kind of getting more exasperated and not necessarily fighting dirtier, but kind of.
Well, yeah, he was.
Yeah. It's great because as soon as Austin starts bleeding, Brett's almost like, like when a shark smells blood in the water.
Yes.
It kind of doesn't make him be like, oh, no, I'm not squeaky clean anymore. He's like, oh, okay, let's capitalize. And he starts getting a bit dirty around that mark. I felt like the blade job literally looked like a razor blade slash. That's like my only criticism. It was like a thin line when he's supposed to hit the thing, but that's just incidental. It's a technical detail. The actual match itself is absolutely phenomenal. It's not my favorite Brett WrestleMania match. That would actually be Brother versus Brother from last week, but this is a close second. This was absolutely fantastic. There's so much to like about it, and we haven't even talked about Ken Shamrock, which is for us to like not talk about Ken Shamrock and the special guest referee outfit just is a testament to how good this match is, right? If it's not the first thing that we want to bring up, there's like so much stuff beforehand that we want to get off our chest.
I didn't want to go too much into Ken Shamrock because otherwise we're going a whole nother direction. I will say this, like him being involved in this, it is a bit of a shame that Shamrock didn't have a better career in the WWE. And I know he had a good one, but it feels like he should have been a main eventer and world champion, considering they bring him in working with these two top guys. But that's a whole nother conversation for another day. It's funny you mentioned about favorite WrestleMania match being the Brett and Owen match. It feels like Brett had a streak, or I guess streak's not the right word, but had kind of a catalog of great WrestleMania matches before everyone else did. And I feel like Brett's era, or at least the first, let's say, 10 years of WrestleMania, people weren't necessarily trying to have great wrestling matches. They're just trying to get the business done that they needed to do, or get the point and the story across. Whereas Brett clearly went out there trying to have the best match, but he had the great match with Piper from, was it WrestleMania 8, the IC title match? Was it 8? I think so. He had that great match with Owen. He had this great match with Austin. Like, I don't know, Brett, I think, underrated WrestleMania figure. Had some great WrestleMania matches. Before that was like the whole big thing. And it's funny because then Shawn Michaels went on to be Mr. WrestleMania, but he had something like 11 losses and 6 wins or something like that. But no, I guess this just go into my worst of WrestleMania. So my best is a Bret Hart match. My worst also going to be a Bret Hart match. I think you know what I'm talking about. WrestleMania 26, Bret versus Vince McMahon. I'm going to be honest, and maybe this is why I dislike this so much. I was excited by this, and I think it was mainly because it's like, holy hell, never thought you'd see Bret in the ring again. We never really thought we'd see him back in WWE full stop, but then actually in a match, it's kind of like, oh my God. And up until this point, it felt like all the Vince matches were great. And just obviously Vince is not a great wrestler by any means, but as he's the boss, he can book all the, smoke and mirrors and the bells and whistles and tell a great story. We've reviewed it on this show before, the Flair versus Vince match.
Royal Rumble, yeah.
Yeah, they didn't do a whole lot, but the match was awesome, and I assumed,
very theatrical, very pantomime-y, just perfect.
Yeah.
For Vince, yeah.
And you would have thought that this Bret and Vince match could have been similar to that. Obviously, Vince is a bit older. Bret, maybe there's some more limitations, but maybe not really, because Bret still does a bunch of stuff in this. Well, I say a bunch of stuff. He punches and kicks and hits with a chair, but that's all he really needed to do. But just the way this whole thing was booked was just so bizarre, with the whole idea that Vince had hired Brett's
Bought the
family to
family,
turn on him. But then Brett's like, oh no, you already paid them. Actually, they're with me. And then, honestly, when I first saw this, and I'm kind of convinced now as well, because Vince McMahon's not done. And I don't know how Brett would have let this get past him, but it felt like to me, I don't know, maybe this is ridiculous because I don't see Vince sabotaging something on one of his biggest shows of the year. But to me, it almost felt like that he was kind of sabotaging Brett. Like because they booked it to the point where the whole family's beating up Vince forever and Brett's hitting Vince with a chair forever. It gets to the point where despite Brett supposed to be the most sympathetic figure and Vince like not at all and a complete arsehole and everything's wrong with Vince, yet during this match, you end up having sympathy for Vince and being like, oh, like when you got like a 20-on-1 and just smashing him with a chair the whole entire time. And if you watch it, the family's just shouting abuse at Vince the whole entire time. Like, you should be ashamed of yourself and coward and all this stuff. The crowd, they kind of pop at first and then they just kind of go silent to the point where the commentary has to kind of comment on it. Like, oh, this is getting awkward. And it's like Vince must have known this wasn't going to work and it was going to go this way. Did he want it to go like this? Because I felt like if they wanted to have a big boom, 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 this is the best thing ever, Brett wins, yay, they could have booked it beautifully. But a lot of that I think would have been, if it basically should have been flipped the other way around. I'm not saying we have the hearts all turn on Brett, but if it was more, Vince had a couple of stooges that beat up Brett and Brett fought from underneath and sold, and then finally comes back and boom, 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 hits him with a chair, puts him in the sharpshooter. It could have been great, but this match, I just don't. It's the way it was booked was so bizarre. And the only thing I can think of
is that it's deliberate.
Is Vince being like, "I'm going to make the people like me more than you somehow." I don't know. Oh man, kind of broke my heart at the time. And it's like Brett came back to do this match. Why? It's up there with the Shawn Michaels Saudi Arabia tag team match. And that's the thing with Brett. He seemed capable enough where he could have maybe had a match with, I think he did have a match with The Miz. Actually. I was going to say The Miz, but I think after this, he did have a match with The Miz, maybe on Raw or something. Okay. But, a talent that could have maybe got more out of it or more out of the match. And the same thing with Shawn Michaels. He finally came back to do that match with Undertaker and Kane. And it's like for years we wanted to see him versus Bryan Danielson. They didn't give us that, but he gave us this tag match, which nobody was asking for, and it was terrible. It's kind of like this. It just really, really heartbreaking. I assume you've seen this match, right?
Yeah. So for me, I actually saw it when it happened. What was this, 2010?
Possibly. It was WrestleMania 26, whatever that was.
Yeah, I think it's 2010. So I saw this when it happened. It's just awful. Unlike you, I was not hyped for this. I thought it was a terrible idea from the start. I had zero interest from the start. I just thought it was a terrible idea. I just thought there's no reason to bring this story back out just for a WrestleMania bit. 1997 was 13 years ago, trudging up a storyline from 13 years ago. I didn't think it was a particularly great idea. I felt like the video package at the start was abysmal. I felt you will disagree, but I felt like the entire conceit of the setup was abysmal. The match, if you want to call it that, yes, was abysmal, but it's not really a match. It's just a weird.
Dude, I think what hurt it was two things. Why did Brett decide to wear jorts? He looks so.
I know.
He looks awful. Like he looks better now than he did in this match. He's wearing jorts. I get that he doesn't want to be maybe in his wrestling gear, but he could have worn something better than what he wore. And then you've got Bruce Hart refereeing in a pair of blue jeans. It just looks so right?
Oh God, I forgot about that. Yeah. The whole thing. Yeah, that's the thing. It also looked messy. It looked sloppy. Not only was it sloppy, just the presentation was sloppy. And it's even down to the outfits. Yeah.
And it's funny because like Vince had that great match. Again, this is years later, I suppose, but he had that great match with Hogan at WrestleMania, 19? He had a bunch of really great matches. And again, I understand this is years later, but was Brett more limited than Hogan was back then? Maybe. But the fact that Brett could punch and kick and hit with a chair, maybe I'm assuming Brett couldn't get hit or take a bump whatsoever. Because I know he had, like, when he retired, he had that Lloyd's of London insurance deal. And I think maybe that was part of the gimmick, was that he could not take a bump or maybe even get hit. So they're like, well, we could do a match just where Brett doesn't get hit or take a bump whatsoever. I'm going to guess that was the reason. I'm sure if I Googled it, I'd probably find out pretty quickly, but I'm going to guess that was their way
I didn't know about this. Okay.
Yes, yeah. He had that, like, quite a bunch of wrestlers had that Lloyd's of London insurance deal. Another one was Mr. Perfect, had it for a while. I think Rick Rude did. Maybe one of the Legion of Doom. And it was really funny because the wrestlers would get it and then try and find ways around it, where, like, maybe one of them, they couldn't do singles matches, but they could do tag matches, all this kind of silly stuff. So, but yeah, we should look into that. Maybe we should do an episode one day on the Lloyd's of London insurance deals and how.
Yeah, I've never heard of this.
Yeah, we should look into it, how they worked out for all the different wrestlers. Yeah.
This match was abysmal for many reasons. One of them is, if we want to go back and compare it to the Ric Flair Vince McMahon street fight from the Royal Rumble that we talked about, another reason was in that if you're talking about like fake business or like made up storyline business deals, Rick's one, they explained very well and it was fun, where he gets a majority share by getting Stephanie and Shane to buy, to sell their stocks to him. That was great. That was very well done. This whole, with no explanation, I bought the Hearts. I paid off the Hearts because I'm Vince McMahon. There was no explanation or build up to it. And then on top of that, you just know that the Hearts wouldn't do that. So when they come down the ring, you already know that they're not going to be on Vince's side. The whole thing just seemed really corny and really fake. And I just was not invested in it from the start. And I honestly think that's kind of my main issue with this. Even if the match itself was good, I still would call this a complete dud because of just the entire conceit.
I feel like if they were going to do that whole thing with the Hearts, which I'm guessing they decided to do last minute, you said it's not conceivable. At the same time, there has been talk about, we can understand families being jealous of someone. And for a fact, like, I'm sure Bruce was jealous of Brett. And I feel like they could have maybe done that in the lead up to WrestleMania, maybe a few weeks before, 3 weeks before, Vince manages to get the Hart family to turn on Brett. And so then when they do the double turn at WrestleMania, it's kind of like, okay. But they tried to do it all in one night, and it was just like, it was just weird, right? It just didn't.
Right.
Yeah. And because at least then they could have explained it. Like, he could have, even if it was a case of Vince getting Bruce to turn, and then you have Bruce cut a promo. You were always the golden boy, blah, blah, blah. It could be a bit more believable.
Exactly.
Anything.
We didn't see Vince like sowing the seeds for this plan way in advance and we could piece things together. There was none of that. It was just literally on the night. I bought the family. There was nothing. It's like, no, you didn't. Like, there was nothing clever about it. So just going into this whole thing, I was already annoyed. And then the match itself just is a non-match.
Absolutely.
It's the icing on the cake in a bad way.
Before we get into your matches, I'm just gonna do this now. So, because I wouldn't necessarily, would I say these are the best and worst moments of WrestleMania? I think they're up there, but I think if you're talking about like greatest moment of WrestleMania, I think, or at least the most iconic moment, I think you probably got a point to Hogan slamming Andre. Seems to be the most sort of iconic. That, and I'd actually say Rock and Hogan is not far from that all. You could even argue Steve Austin winning the title from Shawn Michaels' big moment with Mike Tyson, even though it wasn't a great match. But I'd say most iconic was probably Hogan and Andre.
Has to be.
Yeah, and I think if I was going to say worst moment, you know what I'm going to say. The Austin Hill turn from WrestleMania 17.
I actually thought
Ironic,
you were
the
gonna
best WrestleMania, but the worst moment. But go on, sorry. You thought I was going to say the hardcore battle royal?
No, yeah. I thought you were going to say that Cat versus Terry match, just like something that didn't. But it's not. There's no significance to it.
There's no
so it's not
significance.
offensive. Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
that wasn't good, but it's not the worst moment in
Right.
history. Whereas the Austin turning heel, are just like nobody wanted
A
to
big
see
slap
that.
in the face. Yeah.
Yeah, and that just. Yeah, like everyone wanted to see Hogan slam Andre. The whole entire world wanted to see that.
And
Because
got
it
it.
never
yeah.
been done before. It had been, but the storyline never been done before.
Yeah.
But no one was calling for an Austin heel turn. So I think, yeah, that was oof. I'd say that was the worst moment. What say you, Sam?
That's the one with the biggest like negative impact, which is a huge kind of factor, right?
There's been some other things like there's been some like when like Roman Reigns has won and the crowd's just been like, I guess a lot of people might argue that Brock Lesnar beating Undertaker. I could see that people arguing that as one of the worst moments. But I'm just trying to think of big sort of significant things. People get very upset that Booker T didn't beat Triple H for the title.
Triple H, yeah.
I don't know if you'd say it was the worst moment though. There's definitely been some booking decisions that people haven't been too happy with. What about like a year or two ago when Shane was wrestling The Miz and tore his quads or whatever, and Snoop Dogg had to finish the match? Did you see that?
That was I didn't see it, but I saw like essays on it on YouTube. Yeah, just oh my god, that's so embarrassing. I don't think I could watch it now. I know what it's like because I'd just be embarrassed. But for them, the thing is like, we're not doing like the best of the best moments or matches or like the worst of the worst. They're just ones that we would consider the best or ones that we want to talk about. So for example, for best, my favorite match is still, and I think it is the best match in WrestleMania history, is the ladder match from last week. So I'm not going to talk about it again this week. So I've got another. What you said, I think is a good point, is to some person, the Lesnar and Undertaker thing is probably the worst thing they've ever seen, and they're enraged about it. I would say it's one of the best things I've ever seen. And that's what WrestleMania is about. We all have different things. Like another thing that is one of the best WrestleMania, for me, one of the best WrestleMania moments is Roddy Piper and Goldust doing the OJ Simpson car chase.
Yeah.
Because it's just so dumb and out there. It's like half OJ Simpson car chase, half that fight from They Live that's also Roddy Piper, but on WrestleMania, and they kept cutting back to it through the night. And then it's just, I like madness. I think if you want to call that a comedy match, which I guess you can consider it one, it's up there. But I could imagine people just thinking that's the worst WrestleMania thing they've ever seen. Another good one that I was actually going to put as one of my favorite moments or best moments was the Firefly Funhouse John Cena. Was that WrestleMania 36? I think it was.
The pandemic one, right?
Yeah, the pandemic one, because what else are they supposed to do? And I just found it entertaining and interesting. But I could imagine someone be like, sorry, Sam, is that your worst WrestleMania pick? So that's great. There's always something for everyone. And that's
that I watched it. And I know some people
don't like cinematic stuff.
Well, the thing is, it's like, I get that they're handcuffed with the cinematic stuff, and it's kind of like,
because of COVID.
A cinematic match is maybe going to be better than just more matches in front of zero fans, and I get that. And I'm all for the cinematic matches if it's filmed like, I don't know, like at least it seems real. But even saying that, they did that one with Randy Orton and Edge, which was just terrible. It went on for like 45 minutes, and they were just fighting through the performance center. I feel like there was some cinematic matches that I enjoyed, but that one, I was like, but it's not a wrestling match. It's like a weird. I remember watching it.
It's like This Is Your Life, the show This Is Your Life, but
it wasn't a wrestling
nightmare
match.
version. Yeah. But it's a moment. You can call it a moment. If you don't want to call it a match, it's a moment.
I thought the Boneyard was good. I'll say that.
What?
The Undertaker's last match.
Oh, with AJ Styles.
Mm-hmm.
For the same pay-per-view. That was awesome.
The Briscoe brothers actually did a cinematic match for Ring of Honor during the pandemic where they fought each other on their farm. And I thought that was amazing. Yeah. I thought that was really cool. But on the WWE ones, some of them were really, really, really quite bad. I think one of them was Bray Wyatt against Braun Strowman I watched, and I thought, oh, this is like not good at all. But we're getting in a whole different subject here.
Yeah.
But you think that like that WrestleMania during the pandemic, I'm sure no one will ever go and watch back. Like, why would you? Just a horrible era of wrestling, huh?
It is. But well, the Boneyard match you said was pretty good, and I like this. It's the worst era, but we're also talking about COVID and everything. It's like I feel like they did the best. If there's an era to kind of be experimental, it doesn't matter if they fail, which I'd argue that they did. They tried something, right, and failed.
Sure.
It was a hard era for everyone, but I actually felt like that was just very interesting because I don't think we'd ever see that if COVID, like if all the things didn't happen, we'd never see something like that. So to me, it's interesting.
It's
definitely
such a shame.
A great WrestleMania moment, but
it's such a shame that was Undertaker's last match as well. And what I don't understand, when did Sting leave WWE? So the pandemic stuff started when? The beginning of March of 2020, right?
Yeah, March 2020.
Sting left WWE in May 2020. Oh, hang on. Yeah. In October 2020, WWE stopped selling Sting merchandise and pulled his page from WWE Shop. So they had Sting for what, 3 or 4 years, and they never pulled the plug on doing Undertaker and Sting, the match that people wanted to see forever and ever. And I guess the reason is they didn't think they could pull it off, right? Because Undertaker's old now and Sting was old, and the expectations would be too high, which I actually completely disagree with, because I think, honestly, if Sting just did an amazing entrance, Undertaker did an amazing entrance, and they stood there and they stared at each other, people would be like, this is awesome. Do you know what I mean? They could punch and kick, whatever, do the trademarks, fine. But then WWE almost got handed a gift in the fact that, like, because Undertaker, remember, he did have some bad matches before this Boneyard thing as well. He had the really bad match with Goldberg, and had the really bad tag team match with DX. And I think they maybe had a really bad match with Roman Reigns at WrestleMania. And everyone was kind of saying, geez, I don't think the Undertaker's got it anymore. So him having that match with AJ, I think they booked him and AJ in the first place because it's like, well, AJ can have a great match with anyone. Then it got turned into cinematic match, and it's like, okay, we're going to protect the Undertaker even more. But wouldn't the cinematic match be absolutely perfect for Undertaker and Sting? Just like, like you hide both of their weaknesses, and they both got such bright characters that you could do something really cool with a cinematic match like that. I think that would have rocked. What a missed opportunity, huh? That could have been freaking awesome. It's like, I feel like there's only certain wrestlers that really fit a cinematic match in the first place, and Undertaker and Sting.
Undertaker's definitely one, and Sting too,
Right. And it's like, why didn't they? I wish they would have given us that match, and they had the opportunity to do it, and they didn't. And it's funny because that actually would be an interesting concept for a show once, where we say about matches that could have actually happened, feasibly happened, that companies didn't do, like
What
Rock versus Shawn Michaels, or Shawn Michaels versus Eddie Guerrero, those kind of matches, you know. That would be kind of cool to do. But yeah, I've kind of gone on a tangent here.
Yeah,
I just want to say, best of WrestleMania, we've got to talk as well about Hogan and Rock as well.
Yeah, well, that's a WrestleMania that I really want to cover on the show and get in depth.
We should.
That is a great show. But my actual pick, this is not my favorite WrestleMania moment or best WrestleMania moment or match, but I wanted to pick and discuss the Roman Reigns versus Brock Lesnar match from WrestleMania 31, and it was 2015. The one where Seth Rollins wins. So we talked last week a little bit. I brought up that ladder match that Zack Ryder steals, and then I just had in my mind, just like thefts or things that we didn't see coming, which you just talked about at the start of this episode. We love things coming up now that we don't expect. And I just felt like this was one that was done really well. So the setup package of this match was amazing, simply amazing. Lesnar, quite a good actor, funnily enough, you know, like a natural when he's doing his interviews. It seems like a sports interview. I thought he did a good job. The outdoor San Francisco venue is lovely. Reigns comes to the entrance through the crowd with his entourage of security, his convoy or whatever. That was really good. He was in the middle of a huge push, if I remember, and this was the main event at WrestleMania, and he had everything to prove, as people weren't really behind him yet, as evidenced by the crowd signs, including the famous Wank Pheasant crowd sign that we've all seen, right? That was this match. Heyman comes out with his client Brock Lesnar, and who's not only champion but is obviously a frigging monster. This is during his like MMA gimmick with the Jimmy John's sponsored shorts.
Yeah,
Do you remember those? I love those. Yeah, they brawl right at the start. It's just a brawl. Lesnar is instantly cut open by a punch. I tried to count. There's roughly 2 million suplexes and half a million F5s, give or take.
I'm sure.
They make the bleeding parts for the story, like where he gets cut at the start, and Brock Lesnar also later on gets his head smashed against the ring post. The bleeding parts of the story just seem very like authentic, unlike my criticism with the Steve Austin blading. Reigns starts making this comeback, so it's like almost like a David versus Goliath, or more realistically, a Goliath versus an even bigger Goliath story, which is already good because we love those, right? He spears, so you might think, oh, Roman Reigns might actually pull this off. And then what they call the heist of the century happens as Mr. Money in the Bank, Seth Rollins, cashes in his Money in the Bank in a very kind of authentic, because he's trying to get it cashed in as quickly as he can. He's like nervous. It's just very authentic feeling. Cashes in and legit steals it. It was just an amazing ending to an already well-told and good match. And that just really sticks out to me. And I don't think it gets too much credit. I mean, it does, but just the whole thing, like as a whole, is just a fantastic match. And then I feel like the event, the moment is the theft at the end, the heist of the century. So that's my pick. What say you, man?
Am I right in thinking like Roman hadn't won the world title yet by this point, right?
He mainlined a lot of pay-per-views, but I don't think he won any at that point.
Yeah,
so he's being pushed.
But it almost seemed like the perfect booking, because it felt like they were obviously trying to push Reigns as much as they could, but the crowd weren't really getting behind Reigns, where they probably thought, if we have him win this match, it might actually do the opposite and hurt him even more. And at the same time, they probably didn't want to, they always want to protect Brock, and they can stop Brock from losing. That's important for them because they built him up so much. And this is post him beating Undertaker and everything else. So you don't want him losing, really ever. So doing this storyline with Rollins, sort of stealing it from them both, I think was very, very well done. I would say this, it's almost like, to me, it's probably the height of the Money in the Bank. And I've had some good ones, some really good ones, but I feel like the Money in the Bank's kind of had its day. Like now, Damian Priest has had the briefcase for a long time, and no one really cares too much. By the way, I should say, like, I'm not saying people don't care about Damian Priest. I think they do. I think people think he's very good, and the Judgment Day is great. But the actual briefcase itself, I feel like people are over. It might be time to move on from that. I think, and maybe come up with a new concept. But because, this is probably the peak of it. It's kind of
this is peak cash in. This is the best cash in they've ever done. You probably
can't do better than this. So it's kind of like, and anything else you do, just kind of repeating stuff. This is also the same WrestleMania where, and I thought this is really good how they did this as well. Rollins had wrestled Orton in the opener.
Yes.
And that's when he took that crazy RKO as well, where he went for the double stomp and got pushed up into the Diamond Cutter or RKO.
Yeah.
Honestly, this might, for me, I remember when Rollins was champion here, I'm not sure if it was later in the year or I guess early the next year at the Royal Rumble. I remember him having a three-way match with Brock Lesnar and John Cena. I think it was from the Royal Rumble post this. And I remember thinking, like, wow, this is one of the best three-way matches I've ever seen. And I remember thinking Rollins was just so on it and so good. Honestly feel like this was kind of peak Seth Rollins. And I think actually the work he's doing now is very, very is good as well. But I just think back then I'm saying peak because I just feel like he was hitting his stride and getting to that main event, and it still felt very fresh and new and everything else.
I agree, totally.
Now, obviously, he's been there for years and years. But he's still great, and I'm looking forward to his match with Drew this week, WrestleMania. But I think people do celebrate this moment quite a lot. Here, I'll say this. So the Money in the Bank, you can cash in on a wrestler anytime.
Yeah.
How do you feel about the fact that he cashed it in, there's a match going on, and he cashes it in, and it turns into a freeway for the world title?
So you think it should have changed into like a.
I'm not giving my opinion. I'm just saying.
okay.
I'm asking you. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I like it because you can't take. That would have taken Roman out of the equation, which you can't do, right? Because Lesnar was the champ coming in.
But would that match still not be on as well?
Well, so they're just straight afterwards. He would challenge the winners.
No, like both. So.
Oh, so 2 matches are happening in tandem.
I guess, yeah.
Yeah, oh man. Do you remember someone got really upset because you were trying to question the Money in the Bank from, I can't remember what it was. It was War Games.
War Games, yeah.
Yeah, and people just got so upset with your kind of theory of how it should
well,
work.
It wasn't how it should work. I was just asking the question.
Yeah.
I do think it's a little convoluted. Like, okay, you cash it in on someone, you cash it in during a match, it turns into a match where now
you're just added. Yeah.
Well, also, so like you could be cashing in the Money in the Bank, and like Brock could have pinned Roman, and now you've lost your Money in the Bank briefcase. Kind of a bit weird, right?
I actually think yes, but I actually do think the logic of it, if the Money in the Bank is just a guaranteed shot at the championship, which is all it is, and you can cash it in when you want.
Yeah,
it would stand to reason that you would just be, if you decide to cash it in mid-match, you would just be added to the match because you're still getting your shot. They're not changing, like they're not removing the other person's opportunity, which would be Roman in this case. You're just being added into it. So the logic of that that cash in makes sense to me, but I can see why it would also be kind of strange because they should have really they should have a rule that you can't cash it in mid-match. You'd have the match.
But also, why would you?
There would be no point because no one would care. Everyone's interested in the cash in.
No, why would you cash it in during a match if it turns the match into a freeway? Surely you wouldn't want that. Would you want to put yourself in a position where you don't even have to be pinned and you could lose your title shot?
I think the assumption in this match, at least, is that Seth Rollins is like tried to capitalize on the fact that these two people have just killed each other.
Yeah.
So yes, there might be a 2 or 3 chance of him losing from like a numbers perspective. His odds of winning are high from the fact that these two people have just killed each other perspective.
Yeah.
I think that's the logic, and for me that worked. Like I'm happy with the payoff of this.
Yeah. No, it was very, very well done. And I think I feel like now that Triple H is sort of in charge and there's all this exciting stuff going on in WWE, for years it felt like it's kind of been held down by Vince, and it didn't seem like super exciting stuff happened too often. Something like this really stood out. Obviously, I don't know whose idea this was. It might have been Vince's, but it didn't seem like they came up with stuff like this too often. Now it seems with Triple H, he's all about doing exciting things and everything else. So I'm super duper excited, dude. Like watching the last, I don't know, the WrestleManias and last handful of years, obviously not the pandemic ones, but just watching the show for the sake. Like I don't care about how good the matches are, honestly. Like if there's a good match, that's cool. Like that Charlotte and Rhea match from, was it last year? I think it was. I thought it was absolutely brilliant. But I just really enjoy watching WrestleMania for the production, the setup. Yes. Like I have no interest in American football whatsoever. But
you'll watch the Super Bowl.
And it's entertaining, right?
Right.
And wrestling, I obviously love wrestling, but then you add all this stuff on top. It's just very exciting. The fact they're doing arenas with, whatever it is, 100,000 people. It's just such a big spectacle. And all the wrestlers trying to have special outfits or special entrances for Mania. It really, really is exciting. And I think when you watch WrestleMania, that's when you think like, oh yeah, like no other wrestling company can touch WWE.
They can't do this,
right?
Yeah.
And it's like you might be more into like Japanese style wrestling, or you might be more into like lucha libre, whatever it might be. Then you watch WrestleMania and you're like, okay, but no matter what, I enjoy more. Like nothing can really touch this. You know what I mean? Like just
It's just like a whole other level of spectacle.
It is. And I love that bit about wrestling. Like to me, wrestling is a spectacle, no matter that doesn't necessarily mean it needs to have the biggest set and the most amount of lights. Like we said before about how we love the Madison Square Garden setup, and it's still wrestling's still a spectacle,
Totally agree.
So I'm I'm very much looking forward to WrestleMania this year. So it feels like it had to move to 2 nights because for years they were just doing the longest WrestleManias where they'd be like 6-7 hours long, which is just ridiculous. And it felt like for years there, like the second half of the card, the crowd would be absolutely dead. Like you're having main event matches and the crowd's dead. There's something wrong with that, right?
Right.
Then when did they start doing the 2 nights? That's been like since the pandemic, maybe, or before the pandemic, I think.
I'm not too sure.
My memory on like my knowledge of like current stuff isn't great. Maybe they've been doing that for 4 years now, 5 years. I'm not sure. How do you feel about 2 nights of WrestleMania?
This is the thing. I'm pro WrestleMania. I'm very for it. This is going to sound very negative, but it is like, do you want a 7-hour WrestleMania or 2 nights of WrestleMania? It's like, do you want a kick in the head or a kick in the balls? Like, for me, like, I kind of don't want either. But again, please, like, I really do love and enjoy the spectacle, but like, you're going to be drained either way. It's just a question of, do you want it dragged out over your entire weekend, or do you want to go like just lock yourself in and just go intensive? I actually do think that the 2-night thing is quite a good idea, but they don't try and make, I'll explain why, but like they don't try and make either night that short. Like I just feel like they've given themselves an excuse to just drag it out over 2 nights. It still adds up to like how long? They could have done it all in one day, but
yeah, it's more manageable though. I think like
maybe, yeah.
I feel like maybe last year or the year before it was like 6 matches each night, which seems a lot better than 14 matches in one show or whatever it might be. So yeah,
can't we just have 7 matches though, like in the old WrestleManias?
I think yes, but I think WrestleMania has just turned into such a big spectacle that if it's a WrestleMania match, a WrestleMania moment, it needs like more time than a typical pay-per-view or everything. Like what makes WrestleMania different from the other pay-per-views, you know? And typically WrestleMania, they're running a massive stadium. It takes the wrestler 5 minutes to get to the ring. Do you know what I mean? It's like everything is just like bigger, larger, longer, etc.
Yeah.
So
all right. Yeah,
I feel like they need like more video packages, more special guests, just more of everything, more. So to try and cram that all into one 3-hour event, I think that would be really difficult. So
yeah, other pay-per-views are 3 hours now or 4 hours now. So
no, 3 hours,
it wouldn't. So it wouldn't really stand out, I guess.
Right. Well, it'd be different
like duration wise. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
So I get why they do it over 2 nights, and I do think for sure 2 nights is like, even like you said, it's not ideal, but it's definitely better than the long ass one pay-per-view for sure.
Yeah. And when it was one night, it was still always a WrestleMania weekend, right? But they used to do like Access and these other things on the day before. Anyway, so they already were like, people, if you went there, well, it's already was a weekend. So I guess they just thought, hey, if we already have this time that people was set aside as WrestleMania weekend, let's just give it some breathing room. So it makes sense.
Yeah. And I think obviously for them, there's just so many benefits for doing 2 nights because they've got all those wrestling fans in this city already anyway, and they're going to other indie shows. Do you know what I mean? Like they go, like when we did Madison Square Garden in New York City, that was WrestleMania weekend, and they had however many it was, 20,000 or capacity in MSG, and WWE probably thought, you know, we could have been doing this house. Do you know what I mean? So they've all these wrestling fans, like they've got so many wrestling fans. Is what we got to bear in mind. WrestleMania, a lot of the wrestling fans are coming from like internationally. Do you know what I mean? They're flying. They're flying from Europe, Australia, everywhere to come to WrestleMania. So they're thinking, okay, rather than giving them one show, let's do 2. Like if we can sell out 2 stadiums, it's the same setup and everything else. Because I assume to run WrestleMania, to do the set and everything else, probably costs millions and millions. So, but they could sell it for 2 nights and do double the gate and double the merch and etc. etc. Plus as well, and so I think from a business standpoint, definitely makes a lot of sense. Creatively, I think it makes a lot of sense because it's kind of like, we don't want a long show where the people don't want to be in the second half because the crowd's dead, but we've also got to fit a lot of people on WrestleMania, you know, so we still need to, all in all, WrestleMania to be longer. So there's a lot of factors, but I don't know if it feels, I was going to say, does it not feel as special as 2 nights? But I don't know. Maybe it does. It's going to be harder.
Feels more of like a event.
Yeah.
I guess. It's like,
it's going to be harder though to be like before. It'd be like, oh, my favorite WrestleMania 17 or WrestleMania whatever 13. Now it'd be like, oh, WrestleMania 39
night one.
Yeah, I don't know. It's but
I don't think people will do that. They'll just say WrestleMania 40, instead of 40 night one. I think they keep it as one, like in their minds.
it is interesting though, because I can't remember which weekend it was, but I remember thinking like one WrestleMania night I didn't think was very good, and the other night I thought was awesome. So it's kind of like that. That's interesting as well, like
because like if the first night is bad, then people would be like, so the second night's going to be good, or if this first night was good, like so the second night's going to be great.
Right.
So I guess it's win-win. Yeah.
We should place bets on like which night do you think's gonna be better, 1 or 2? So
what are you most looking forward to with your knowledge of what's going on so far for 40? Night 1 or night 2? I'm really excited for night 1, I think.
I'm most excited to see The Rock wrestle.
Yeah, that's night 1. Yeah.
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 I think I'm honestly most excited for that. I'm trying to think what else. I was very excited for Logan Paul and Randy Orton. I think not as excited for it to be a freeway with, even though I love Kevin, he's great. I'm just not as excited for a freeway. Match wise, probably the Rock, seeing the Rock wrestle, but honestly, kind of like I said before, I'm just more excited to see the spectacle of it all. Is Austin going to turn up? Is Hogan going to turn up? Like all the razzmatazz, all the entrances, all that kind of stuff. That I'm more excited about that than anything else, I think.
Yeah, and it's different for us now that we have like a community that we talk. We talk about this stuff. Because of the podcast as well. So it's different now. It's like an event. So Absolutely. It's really cool. Really
Absolutely.
Cool. How are we going to talk about my crappy Michael Cole match after just talking about how great WrestleMania is?
I was about to take us home.
Yeah, let's not talk about Michael. Yeah, I was like, hey, my least favorite WrestleMania moment I'm going to pick was like frigging Michael Cole versus Jerry Lawler. We'd have to talk about that. It was total dog water. It was like 14 minutes long, and the setup was 12 minutes long. And then Stone Cold drinks beers at the end. And this
was like the same sort of timeline as this Brett and what WrestleMania was that from?
Oh, this was 27, so it was the year after.
Like what they went for this weird phase of wanting to do like weird, long, terrible matches at WrestleMania. It's very odd, right?
Yeah, it's weird. They tried to set up these match graphics to kind of sell the feud, and they just looked awful. They looked like if I made them in Photoshop. Ropey and terrible. It took forever. Like they brought out Jack Swagger, Booker T, Jim Ross, Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Oh my God. Yeah. I just remember if you're going to book this match, make it 5 minutes tops. It's like, don't give these guys 14 minutes. Oh,
yeah. 5-minute comedy match. Yeah. Let's just do that.
Jeez.
Yeah, but they didn't. But anyway,
hopefully there won't be any stinkers like that this year's WrestleMania. But yeah, next week we will be reviewing the shows.
Yes.
So watch your WrestleManias on the Saturday and Sunday, and then we're going to attempt to get our reviews out as soon as possible, so you'll get to hear our thoughts whilst it's still fresh and everything else. And I'm announcing this now, so I'll hold ourselves accountable to get it done for you, the people. But everyone, I hope you have an amazing WrestleMania weekend, whether you're going live to the events or you're staying at home and enjoying it with your loved ones. And it's WrestleMania. It's kind of like, for wrestling fans, it's like Christmas, right? Because even if, like I said, you're not a big WWE fan, it's WrestleMania week. There's a lot of stuff going on. It's where everyone celebrates pro wrestling for a week. And we do that every single week here on the Chilling with the Villain podcast. Celebrate the good and the bad. But if you're not following us already on the social medias and YouTube, please do, at the Villain Pod. I would be very greatly appreciated. You come debate with me whether you think the European title was a big deal or not, because a lot of people seem to remember it being a really big deal and asking me questions like, were you even watching wrestling during this period? Like that is some kind of flex or something. It's very funny. But you can have those sort of debates with me on the social media. So follow us at the Villain Pod. But I'm afraid that's all we've got time for. So yes, happy WrestleMania.
Yeah, happy WrestleMania and have a good WrestleMania week till next week.